Hello and welcome to On Point, a podcast by Oak Street Funding, where we bring research and data-backed insights to dig into the minds of industry leaders, to learn how to stand out and navigate and break through this ever-changing industry. I am your host, Bridget Height, and you can support this podcast by following us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on our website, or wherever you get your podcasts. We will be there hanging out, talking to industry leaders, and ready to empower you to grow your business. So now let's get on point. Today, I am delighted to welcome Susie McEuen and Dennis Leininger to the show. Susie is Vice President of Strategic Markets for Oak Street Funding, and Dennis is founder of the Business Transition Solutions. Today, they are going to share ideas for growth and transition for financial advisor practices into becoming independent advisors. Welcome, Susie. Welcome, Dennis.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Thanks for having me. Excited about this.
You too, Dennis. So I'll start with you. Can you just give us a little bit about what it is that Business Transition Solutions does and how you work with advisors?
Sure. Business Transition Solutions, or BTS, as we are probably more commonly known, is involved with working with employee financial advisors who are making a move from the employee model to independence, setting up their own practice, their own business operations to support that practice. And what BTS does is work to simplify the process of standing up their business operations, everything from entity structure, budget, putting together a timeline of how everything is going to fold together, human resources, benefits, technology, office space, continuity planning, succession planning, client messaging, technology, if I hadn't already said that. So just everything that's involved with standing up their business operations and then helping them acclimate to how to operate in the independent space.
So now getting into the topic of this episode, transitioning to independence for investment advisors. What do you think advisors should consider before a full commitment to independence?
Well, I don't think that it's enough for them to not be happy where they are, although I think that that's good impetus for them to go ahead and start exploring. But I think that they should start to envision what it is that they'd really like to accomplish as they would make this move. The first thing that they should look at are their clients to think about how that they would react. They shouldn't be overly concerned about their clients following them in our experience, because generally the clients will. It's about good client messaging and a good strategy to do that, and having good reasons why you would want to make this move for the client's benefit. But just to take a look at your overall client base and think about them first, because it really starts and stops with the clients. And then crystallizing what their vision is for their new business, their new practice. Not recreating the model that they're currently at, but rather thinking of it as, what would you like to change, and how would you model your client service model, if you will? How would you do that? Who would you like to have join you is another big thing. Not talking with them yet because it's too early, but at least thinking about that. And then pulling any contracts or affiliation agreements, et cetera, that you have with your current firm, because those would need to be analyzed at some point.
Great comments, Dennis. I agree 100%. And then also they need to think about, too, what it's going to be like for them to be a business owner. Some of these advisors that are employed currently as W-2 have never obviously ran a business. So they need to look at that aspect as well. There's a lot of variations of going independent. And that would be that some advisors, they're employees, like you mentioned, Dennis, at a firm. There are advisors that are coming from the wirehouse. They need to look at broker protocol versus non-broker protocol. And as you mentioned earlier, about reviewing their agreements to make sure they're doing all the things correctly legally. But I think running the business side from a lending standpoint is understanding what they're going to look like, not only taking care of their clients, that's probably foremost, but also running a business while they're managing that client book, as well as taking care of their employees.
Okay. So, how do you know when and if you're ready to break away and go independent? Are there certain requirements that need to be met, or indicators that that are in place to be able to go independent? Susie, do you want to start there?
Yes, I think, and like I said, there's variations of different going independent if they're moving from a wirehouse or an employee, or if they are independent but maybe going to RIA. So there's different, I want to call flavors, so to speak. And the first thing is making sure that they get with a consulting firm like Dennis's, as well as an attorney to review their employment agreement and to make sure that they are not going to do something that is going to be detrimental for moving their book of business.
Okay. What do you think, Dennis? How do you know when it's time?
Most of these advisors that come over, I mean, yes, the financial considerations are pretty dramatically different, but I think it really starts with how dissatisfied you are in your current employer and how much of your brain time is spent on thinking about how you wished it was different and like to make a change. You probably love what you're doing, but just don't like where you're doing it at. And then it's about, do you feel comfortable taking control of the situation? Don't worry about what you don't know. The how and the what will be discovered as you go. But if your motivation is really clear and you know you want to do this, then I think you should. And when I left the corporate world some 20 plus years ago, I remember having coffee with my dad and saying, "Gee, Dad, do you think I can do this by myself and go off on my own?" And he said, "Well, Denny, if you can do it for the other guy, you can do it for yourself." And that's really true. The things that you have to learn are new, but everything that is easy was once new. And we'll lead you through it. We'll simplify it as much as we possibly can. Doesn't mean that we just check a box. Things still have to be done correctly. But if the other guy can run a business, well, so can you. It's not that difficult once you get it up and running.
Great advice. Okay, so what can an advisor who is considering launching an independent advisory business or any move at all start doing to prepare themselves for a move? Susie, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I first of all would say get with Business Transition Solutions with Dennis, because there's so many things that you need to look at before starting the move. Are you going to create a new entity? Have you ever moved clients before? Depending on the situation with the advisor, if they've come out of a wirehouse and became, because Dennis and I have worked with advisors that have come out of wirehouse and become W-2 with a broker dealer or, with broker dealer, then they want to go independent. They have moved before, so that's good. But also, they need to look at the big picture as far as what it's going to do to their clients, their employees, looking for space, how much that's going to cost. Are they going to need financing? Are they going to create a new entity of some sort? All those factors. They need to surround themselves with a consultant, attorney, make sure that all the pieces are in place before they make the move.
Okay. Do you have anything to add to that, Dennis, as far as preparation goes?
I think that Susie touched on there as far as there shouldn't be any disqualifiers, to be honest with you. It's just things that you don't know yet, like I said before. I would start with your documents, with the arrangement that you have with your current employer, to just know exactly what the obligations are, what your outs are, what the restrictions are, if there are any, et cetera. I'd also think you ought to make a physical list of the things that you want to accomplish with this move and why you want to make it. And then again, to Susie's point, that would be something that we would go through that conversation with you to make sure that you have options and answers for each of those kinds of things, so that the pieces of the Rubik's Cube start coming together. And we just keep working with that until it comes out right. Another point would be to do your exploration, your due diligence, discovery, whatever you want to call it, with broker dealers or RIAs if you're going to go that route, and select who's going to be that firm that you affiliate with, that you in essence hire. And they'll have certain things that they will do for you, none of the business things actually. Those would be things that we would partner with them on to help you get over. But it'll help you identify whether or not this is a good move for you. And then it's just a question of let's make it happen.
Okay. That kind of led us into you sort of touched on the next question is what are the first steps to becoming independent? So do you have anything else as far as first steps that you'd like to cover?
I think that they need to look personally with their financial situation as well, because they are transitioning. And if they are changing broker dealers or custodians and they've got to repaper, there's going to be a little bit of a lull as far as those assets moving and them earning an income. So have they looked at their situation? That they've got plenty of liquidity to be able to make that bridge the gap, so to speak. And if they are looking for financing, how that's going to look. And we can definitely talk about that as Oak Street Funding. We provide financing for transition. And Dennis and I have worked with a lot of W-2 employees that have gone independent. And it does make a difference if they are repapering. It does take longer.
Okay, great. So, Susie, what do lenders consider and how can someone show their lender that independence is right for them?
Well, first thing is making sure that they can actually move their book.
Okay.
And there's not going to be a problem with their employment agreement or contract. Also, I like to hear that they're working with a firm like Dennis, Business Transition Solutions, because they need to surround themselves with the right people that's going to help them make the move financially as well as moving those assets. If they do need financing from our side, then we want to make sure that they have their financial information, their personal financial statement in order. They're current on their taxes. They have a clean ADV. They also have good credit. A pro forma is really important, and this is where Dennis's team comes in, because what they're going to look like once they transition to independent is going to look different than they are now, because they're typically a W-2 employee.
Right.
They're going to have business expenses. So we're going to rely on that pro forma to be able to get them qualified to help them with working capital financing if they need that.
Okay. So are there any unexpected or hidden challenges that breakaway advisors have encountered during their transition to independence?
I have been pretty fortunate with the ones that I've worked with because they've been prepared. We always say this: contact us as immediately as possible if they're thinking to do that. And also with, their consultant, attorney, and those are the questions that we're going to ask. The surprise will be is if they find out that they can't necessarily move their book, but also if they owe some money to the current firm that they're at now, and that firm is demanding that they have that money paid before they actually move those assets. That can be sort of a surprise as well.
Okay. So Dennis, do you have any thoughts on that and anything that might be obvious to consider for advisors?
Well, the biggest thing that we run into, and we have done hundreds and hundreds of these, are the advisors who reach out to somebody else who's maybe made the move, whether it's to the custodian or broker dealer that they are going to or not. They falsely consider that there's only one way to do it. And the fact is that what somebody else does to set up their business or make a decision on this or that doesn't necessarily apply to this practice that's making the move now. And so there needs to be solutions, options to make sure that they create the type of structure, the type of business operation, the type of culture that really fits their business and not just the guy across the street. So to make sure that when they work with the wrong CPA, for instance, or they set up the wrong operating agreement and they don't protect their practice throughout the move and after the move, they don't do some things perhaps best from a budget standpoint and a provider standpoint with insurance benefits. Those kinds of things. It's a little bit like a contractor going in trying to fix what a do-it-yourselfer has done with their house, and it can be very problematic. And to take a line from Animal House. It could take years and cost millions of lives to fix it.
Okay, so these are some of the mistakes that you can make. Susie, do you have anything to add to that? What are some common mistakes that happen during this course?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay.
We've been very fortunate with the ones we do a lot of due diligence on our front end to make sure that it goes smoothly. So knock on wood.
Okay. So next question. You successfully helped an advisor transition to independence. Do advisors need to consider succession planning early on? And what options exist for ensuring the long-term sustainability of an independent practice? Dennis?
Yeah, thank you, because it's huge. That's one of the things. So usually, it's one of the reasons that they're looking to make the change, particularly if they have an advisor on their team or even the lead advisor who is looking at their succession in a few years, because there are certain steps that they need to make sure that the tax considerations will work to their advantage, et cetera. So yeah, we go ahead and approach that really early on in the conversation. I wouldn't say at the very beginning, but maybe about 2/3 of the way through. That's when we get into talking about one, continuity to protect the practice in case of a triggering event, but then very strongly in terms of a retirement succession. We call that finishing well. Because a lot of these advisors have no idea coming from employment opportunities or situations that they actually can design how it is that they leave, how they exit. And so in some cases, we talk with them about, okay, you don't have a succession plan internally. Maybe that's one for us to recruit to get you that kind of a plan internally. Maybe it's another practice that's qualified to take your clients and able to serve them within the affiliate network that you're going to be joining. But then let's talk through and see how this is going to work. So yeah, it's you want to attack it early. It also might depend on what you do then in your operating agreement, et cetera, and your continuity documents to make sure that you accomplish the goals that way. And obviously, this is something I'm very passionate about. So really love working with people to help them accomplish this.
That's great. Thanks, Dennis. Susie, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, sure. We do a lot of succession financing, partner buy-ins, shareholder buyouts, and I think we're doing a lot more of that than we are M&A right now. And it's because of the aging population with the advisors. So we want to be involved as soon as possible, and we can help teams, especially if they're transitioning and they have an older advisor that they want to sell to a younger advisor. And it's important that they start sooner than later. And the reason is, as time marches on, the value of that practice is going to go up. And so we want I call it Gen 2 or the successor, to be able to afford to be able to buy out that book of business. We provide conventional financing. And so, in fact, in partner buy-in type loans, we've done 100% financing. So we really have a good program to help make this happen.
So Dennis, as we wrap up, do you have any key takeaways for our listeners that you can share?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, Bridget, is that you're going to come up with things that you think might be insurmountable. Maybe it's a loan that you have to pay off. Maybe it's the non-protocol status, if that's the case, your confidentiality or maintaining your confidentiality, people coming with you, or just even some of the components of standing up your own business, things that you don't know. But here's the thing. Those are just items that have to be solved throughout the process. There isn't a thing there that we haven't dealt with before. As Susie related on, if you have a loan or you need startup capital, that's where Oak Street could get involved and help you from that standpoint. And there isn't anything from our perspective that we really haven't dealt with that we can't lead you through. So if you want to do this, then it's a question of, okay, let's make it happen.
Great. Thanks for that. Dennis, we always like to end these shows with a fun question for our guests. So if you're game, I'm curious to know if you could watch a movie or a show for the first time again, which one would it be?
I'd pick Caddyshack because I know absolutely every line in it, and I do a wicked Bill Murray. But it'd be nice to watch it just once and have that feeling of being surprised, by somebody on that. So
Good answer. Thanks, Dennis. Susie, how about you?
We have very similar movie tastes, Dennis, because I was going to say Christmas Vacation.
Oh my gosh.
Because
there you go.
it never gets old, and I can relate to some of those situations that family has encountered. And the guy that walks in with the box with the cat inside of it reminds me of my dad. He's deceased now. But anyway, it just brings a lot of joy and laughs.
She wrapped her cat.
Yeah.
Nothing worse than a squirrel in your tree.
Nothing worse. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it, Dennis. Thank you, Susie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget.
So thank you all for listening to On Point, a podcast by Oak Street Funding, where we bring research and data-backed insights to dig into the minds of industry leaders, to learn how to stand out and navigate and break through this ever-changing industry. I am Bridget Height, and tune in next time wherever you listen to podcasts as we get On Point. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Thanks for being here.